I, 28F, always believed that marriage was a partnership, a team of two people facing the world together. My husband, Mark, 30M, used to say he believed that too. We had been married for 3 years, and for the most part, they were calm years. There were small frictions, of course, the kind that every couple has. Most of those frictions involved his mother, Eleanor, and his sister, Chloe. They had a way of making comments that felt like tiny, sharp pebbles in my shoe. Annoying, uncomfortable, but something I thought I was supposed to endure for the sake of family peace. I told myself that their passive aggression was just their way, and that Mark's tendency to ignore it was his way of avoiding conflict. I made excuses for him. I made excuses for them. I kept the peace because I thought that was my job as a wife and daughter-in-law. The peace I had worked so hard to maintain shattered on a Tuesday evening. It was one of Eleanor's mandatory family dinners. She held them every month, and attendance was not optional. We were all gathered in her perfectly decorated dining room, the one with the crystal chandelier that she always polished right before guests arrived. The air was thick with the scent of roasted chicken and unspoken resentments. Chloe was talking about a recent promotion at her job, making sure to mention the significant bonus she received. Eleanor was beaming with pride, patting Chloe's hand and telling her she was the most brilliant daughter a mother could ask for. Mark was smiling, nodding along, looking every bit the proud brother. I sat there, sipping my water, feeling like an audience member at a play I had not auditioned for. The real reason for the dinner became clear after the plates were cleared. Eleanor folded her hands on the table, her expression turning serious. She looked at me, her eyes missing their usual feigned warmth. "Now, dear," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "We need to have a serious talk about Mark's future." I glanced at Mark, but he was staring intently at his empty plate.
He knew this was coming.
He had to have known. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I knew what this was about. My grandparents had passed away a year ago and left me their small house, a modest but lovely property in a quiet neighborhood. It was the house my mother grew up in, filled with memories of my childhood summers. It was precious to me, not for its monetary value, but for the love it represented. "Mark has such a wonderful business idea," Eleanor continued, her voice gaining a persuasive edge. "He has the vision, the drive. All he needs is the capital to get it started." Chloe jumped in, her tone sharp and businesslike. "The bank requires a significant amount of collateral for a startup loan of that size. It's just standard procedure." I kept my voice even. "I understand that. And I have told Mark that I support him, but selling my grandparents' house is not an option." I had said this to Mark at least a dozen times in private. Each time, he had seemed to understand, or at least he had dropped the subject. I was not against helping him. I had offered to help him write a business plan, to look for investors, to use a portion of our shared savings. But the house was a line I would not cross. It was the one solid piece of my own family history that I had left. Eleanor sighed, a theatrical, long-suffering sound. "You're being sentimental. It's a building. Bricks and mortar. Mark's future, your future together, is what's really important." "It's more than bricks and mortar to me," I said quietly. "It's my family's legacy." Chloe scoffed. "A legacy of what? Being stubborn? Your family's military background has made you so rigid. You can't see the bigger picture. You have to be willing to make sacrifices in a marriage." The mention of my family struck a nerve. My father was a colonel in the army. I grew up on bases around the world, and yes, it taught me discipline and resilience. I was proud of that. They always used it as a subtle insult, a way to paint me as cold and unfeeling. I looked at Mark, waiting for him to step in, to defend me, to tell them we had already discussed this. He finally lifted his head, but he did not look at me. He looked at his mother. "She just doesn't get it, Mom," he said, and his voice was filled with a weary disappointment that cut me deeper than any anger could have. "I've tried to explain it to her. It's for us. For our family." The word "us" felt like a lie. This was not about us.
This was about them.
His mother wanted to brag about her successful son. His sister wanted the reflected glory. And Mark, my husband, just wanted the easy way out. Maybe you haven't been clear enough, Mark, Eleanor said, turning her sharp gaze back to me. Let me be clear. You're holding him back. Your refusal to part with that old house is selfish. A good wife would support her husband's dreams, not stand in their way with childish attachments. My hands were trembling under the table. I clenched them into fists. I am not being childish. I am setting a boundary. A boundary? Chloe laughed, a short, ugly sound. It sounds more like an ultimatum. You're telling him that your dead grandparents are more important than your living husband. The cruelty of her words took my breath away. I felt my face flush with a mixture of anger and shame. All I wanted was for Mark to say something, anything,
To tell them to stop.
He finally turned to me. His eyes were cold. Chloe has a point, he said. It does feel like that sometimes. It feels like you're not really on my team. The room fell silent. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall seemed to grow louder with every beat of my heart. He had not just failed to defend me. He had actively sided with them. He had taken their insults and validated them. He had stood with his mother and sister and pointed a finger at me, his wife, labeling me as the problem. I felt a profound sense of humiliation wash over me. It was hot and suffocating. They were all looking at me, a united front, waiting for me to break, to cry, to give in. They had cornered me, and the person who was supposed to be my partner had just helped them build the cage. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the polished wood floor. My voice, when I finally found it, was barely a whisper. I need to go. Eleanor looked surprised, as if she couldn't believe I would dare to leave. We're not finished here. Oh, I think we are, I said, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. I looked directly at Mark. His expression was a mixture of annoyance and something that might have been guilt, but it was too little, too late. The damage was done. He had made his choice. He had chosen his mother's approval over his wife's dignity. I walked out of the dining room without another word. I grabbed my purse and my coat from the hall, my movements stiff and robotic. I could hear them start talking as I opened the front door, their voices a low, angry murmur. I did not care what they were saying. The only voice I could hear was Mark's, echoing in my head. She just doesn't get it, he was right. I did not get it. I did not get how the man I had promised to love and honor could sit there and watch his family tear me apart, and then hand them the knife to finish the job. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped outside, but it did nothing to cool the fire of betrayal burning in my chest. I had never felt so alone. The drive home was silent. It was a thick, heavy silence, filled with everything that had been said and everything that had not. Mark gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. I stared out the passenger window, watching the streetlights blur into long, watery streaks. I refused to cry in front of him. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing my tears. He had seen enough of my vulnerability for one night. When we walked into our house, the silence followed us. It filled the space between us, pushing us further apart. I went straight to the bedroom and started to change out of my dress. Mark followed me, closing the door behind him. You can't just walk out like that, he said, his voice low and tight. You embarrass me. I stopped, my hand frozen on the zipper of my dress. I turned to face him, my disbelief so sharp it felt like a physical blow. I embarrassed you? Are you serious, Mark? You sat there while your mother and sister called me selfish and childish and rigid. You agreed with them. You humiliated me in front of them, and you're worried about being embarrassed? They're just concerned about our future, he argued, his voice rising. They see my potential, and they don't understand why you're being so difficult about this. It's just a house. It is not just a house. I finally snapped, my control breaking. How many times do I have to say that? It's the last piece of my grandparents I have. It's important to me. Why is that so hard for you to understand? Or do you just not care? Of course I care, he said, but his words were hollow. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I knew well. But you're being emotional. You're not thinking logically. This is a business decision. It's the seed money, that could set us up for life. Why are you choosing a building over our future? The gaslighting was so blatant, so textbook. He was twisting my feelings into a flaw, my reasonable boundary into an emotional overreaction. He was making me the villain of his story. I felt a sudden, chilling clarity. This isn't about our future, Mark. This is about your future. You want that money, so you don't have to do the hard work of finding real investors. You want me to sell my family's history, so you can have a shortcut. That's not fair, he shot back. I've been working on this for months. You know how much this means to me. I know, I said, my voice dropping to a quiet, dangerous level. I know it means more to you than my feelings do. You made that perfectly clear tonight. He had the decency to look away, a flicker of shame in his eyes. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by defensiveness. My mom and Chloe were a little harsh, okay? I'll talk to them. But they have a point. You're not being a team player. That was it. That was the moment something inside me broke for good. It was not just the insults from his family anymore. It was his complete and utter refusal to see my side, to validate my feelings, to stand by me as his partner. He was not on my team. He was the captain of the opposing one. I turned away from him and walked to the closet. I pulled out a duffel bag from the top shelf. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice laced with confusion. "I'm not sleeping in here tonight," I said, my back still to him. I started pulling clothes from my drawers, my movements jerky and uncoordinated. A pair of sweatpants, a t-shirt, a sweater. I was not thinking about what I was packing, only that I could not share a bed with him tonight. I could not lie next to the man who had so casually betrayed me. "Oh, come on," he said with an exasperated sigh. "Don't be so dramatic. We had a fight. Couples fight. You don't have to move out over it." "I'm not moving out," I said, zipping the bag closed. "I'm moving to the guest room. I need some space to think." "About what?" he demanded. "About how you're going to sabotage my business?" I spun around to face him, the bag clutched in my hand.
No, Mark.
I'm going to think about why I've spent the last 3 years of my life with a man who lets his family disrespect me and then tells me I'm the one who's wrong. I'm going to think about whether this is the kind of partnership I want to be in for the rest of my life. His face paled. For the first time that night, he looked genuinely scared. "You don't mean that." "I don't know what I mean right now," I said honestly. "But I know I can't be near you. I need to be alone." I walked past him, out of the bedroom and down the hall to the small guest room at the end of the house. I closed the door behind me and locked it. The click of the lock felt final, like the sound of a chapter ending. I leaned my back against the door and slid down to the floor, the duffel bag beside me. The tears I had been holding back finally came, hot and silent. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of anger and a deep, profound disappointment. The man I loved had shown me his true colors, and they were the colors of his mother and sister. They were the colors of betrayal. I sat on the floor of the guest room for what felt like hours, the silence of the house pressing in on me. Mark knocked on the door once, his voice muffled. "Can we please talk about this?" I did not answer. After a few moments, I heard his footsteps retreat down the hall. I was relieved. I had nothing left to say to him tonight. My mind was a chaotic storm of replays from the dinner, each word from Eleanor and Chloe a fresh sting, each moment of Mark's complicity a new twist of the knife. I finally pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over my dad's contact name, but I hesitated. Calling him felt too big, too real. It would mean admitting that my marriage was in serious trouble, and I was not ready for that yet. Instead, I called my best friend, Sarah. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and cheerful.
"Hey, what's up?" she said.
My voice cracked as I tried to speak. "Sarah?" Her tone changed instantly. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "The dam broke." I told her everything, the words tumbling out in a messy, tearful rush. I told her about the dinner, the pressure to sell the house, the insults about my family, and the final, crushing blow of Mark siding with them. I explained how he had called me emotional and not a team player, how he had made me feel small and alone in a room full of people who were supposed to be my family. Sarah listened patiently, letting me get it all out. When I was finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "That man is a coward," she said finally, her voice laced with cold fury. "A complete and utter coward. I am so sorry you had to go through that." Hearing her say it, hearing the validation in her voice, made me feel a little less crazy. "He says I'm being sentimental," I whispered. "You're not being sentimental," she said fiercely. "You're protecting something that matters to you. That house is your history. It's a tangible connection to your grandparents. He has no right to demand you give that up, especially for some half-baked business idea he can't even get a real loan for." "That's what I tried to say," I said, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. "But he just doesn't see it. It's like his mom and sister have this hold on him, and their opinion matters more than mine." "This isn't just about the house anymore, is it?" Sarah asked gently. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me.
"No.
"It's about respect." He let them walk all over me. He didn't just let them, he helped them. He looked me in the eyes and basically said my feelings didn't matter. "So, what are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "I'm in the guest room." I told him I needed space to think. "Good," she said firmly. "You take all the space you need. Don't let him sweet-talk his way back in 5 minutes from now. What he did was a massive betrayal. It's not something you just get over after a quick apology." We talked for a while longer. Sarah helped me sort through my tangled emotions, her clear-headed anger acting as an anchor in my storm of hurt. She reminded me of all the other smaller instances, the little paper cuts of disrespect from Eleanor and Chloe over the years that Mark had brushed aside. The time Eleanor had redecorated our living room while we were on vacation because she didn't like my taste. The time Chloe had made a joke at a party about how I was all discipline and no fun because of my military upbringing. Mark had laughed along with them both times. Seen individually, they were minor annoyances. But strung together, they formed a pattern of disrespect that he had not only tolerated but enabled. After I hung up with Sarah, I felt a little stronger. The hurt was still there, a raw ache in my chest, but it was now mixed with a cold, hard anger. She was right. This was a pattern. And tonight, it had escalated from casual disrespect to a full-blown assault on my character and my family. I finally decided to call my dad. I knew he would be up. He was an early riser, a habit ingrained from decades in the military. He answered with his usual brisk, "Go ahead." "Hi, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everything all right?" he asked immediately. He could always tell when something was wrong, even from a few short words. "Not really," I said. I gave him the condensed version of the story, leaving out the most emotional details. I told him about the pressure to sell the house and the argument it had caused. I did not tell him about the depth of the humiliation or that I was sleeping in the guest room. I did not want to worry him too much. He was quiet for a moment after I finished. "That property is a non-negotiable," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "Your grandparents wanted you to have it. End of discussion." "I know," I said. "That's what I told them." "Mark should have supported you on that," he continued. "A husband's job is to have his wife's back, especially when it comes to his own family." His simple, direct statement was more comforting than any expression of sympathy could have been. He understood the principle of the matter. Loyalty. Unity. The very things Mark had failed to show. "I know," I said again, my voice thick with emotion. "You hold your ground," he said. "Don't let them bully you. You're stronger than they are." We talked for a few more minutes about other things, the weather, his upcoming inspection tour. It was our way of stepping back from the emotional edge. By the time we hung up, I felt a sense of resolve beginning to solidify in my gut. My best friend had validated my anger, and my father had reinforced my strength. I was not alone in this. The knot in my stomach was still there, but it was no longer a knot of fear. It was a knot of determination. I did not know what the next steps were, but I knew I was not going to give in. The battle line had been drawn, and for the first time, I was ready to fight back. The next morning, I woke up on the uncomfortable guest bed with a stiff neck and a heavy heart. The anger from the night before had cooled into a steely resolve. I got up, showered, and dressed before Mark was even awake. When I walked into the kitchen, he was sitting at the table, nursing a cup of coffee. He looked tired and haggard. "Morning," he mumbled, not looking at me. "Good morning," I replied, my voice neutral. I went about my routine, making my own coffee, trying to act as normal as possible. The air was thick with unspoken tension. "Look," he finally said, breaking the silence. "About last night."
I'm sorry.
Things got out of hand. It was the apology I had been waiting for, but it felt hollow, rehearsed. "What exactly are you sorry for, Mark?" I asked, turning to face him. He seemed taken aback by the direct question. "I'm sorry it turned into a fight. I'm sorry you got upset." I shook my head slowly. "So, you're sorry for my reaction, not for what you did." He sighed in frustration. "What do you want me to say?" "I already said my mom and Chloe were too harsh. I'll talk to them." "That's not enough," I said quietly. "I needed you to have my back last night. I needed you to be on my team. And you weren't. You sided with them against me." "I was trying to keep the peace," he argued. "No," I corrected him. "You were trying to get what you wanted. You were willing to sacrifice my feelings to get my house. That's not keeping the peace. That's manipulation." He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "I'm not going to do this again."
I said I'm sorry. Can we just move on?
He was trying to shut down the conversation, to sweep the entire incident under the rug, as if it were just a minor disagreement.
This was his pattern.
Avoid, deny, and pretend everything was fine. I decided then and there that I was done with his pattern. "No, we can't just move on," I said. "Not until we actually resolve this." He threw his hands up in exasperation. "There's nothing to resolve. You're holding on to a house we could use to build our future, and I think you're being stubborn. You think I'm a monster. We disagree. What more is there to say?" He walked out of the kitchen, ending the conversation. It was clear he had no intention of truly understanding my perspective. His apology was a tactic, not a genuine expression of remorse. I felt a surge of cold determination. If he was not going to be my partner, then I needed to protect myself. Later that day, while he was out running errands, I sat down at my laptop. My first instinct was to look at our finances. We had a joint savings account and a joint checking account. I had always trusted him to manage the day-to-day bills, as he had more experience with it. I logged into the bank's website, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I was not sure what I was looking for, but I had a nagging feeling that something was wrong. I started with the joint savings account. It was supposed to be our emergency fund, and we had a significant amount saved up. The balance was much lower than I expected. I scrolled through the transaction history, my heart starting to beat faster. Over the past 6 months, there had been a series of large withdrawals, all made by Mark. Thousands of dollars moved from our savings to our joint checking account. My hands trembled as I clicked over to the checking account history. I saw the corresponding deposits, but the money did not stay there long. There were large payments to credit cards I did not recognize and several cash withdrawals from ATMs near a casino on the other side of town. The casino we had gone to once for a friend's birthday, the one Mark had sworn he found depressing. But the most alarming transactions were a series of wire transfers to an entity called Innovest Solutions. There were 3 of them, each for $5,000. I had never heard of Innovest Solutions. Mark had never mentioned them. This was not for household bills or regular expenses. This was something else entirely. $15,000 of our shared savings, gone, sent to a company I knew nothing about. I felt sick to my stomach. This was not just about him wanting to sell my house anymore. This was about our money, the money we had both worked to save, being spent behind my back on things he was actively hiding from me. The pressure to sell the house suddenly made a lot more sense. He was not looking for seed money for future business. He was looking for money to cover a hole he had already dug. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I needed to be smart about this. I printed out the bank statements, highlighting the suspicious transactions. I put them in a folder and hid it in the back of my closet, under a box of old winter sweaters. When Mark came home, I decided to test the waters. I kept my tone casual, trying not to betray the anger and fear churning inside me. "Hey," I said, meeting him in the living room. "I was just looking over our finances. The savings account is a little lower than I thought it would be." He froze for a second, his back to me as he hung up his jacket. "Oh, yeah, I had to move some money around for some bills," he said, his voice a little too breezy. "What kind of bills?" I pressed gently. "I thought we had everything covered by our checking account." He turned around, and his expression was tight, defensive. "It was just some unexpected expenses. Car repairs, a higher-than-usual utility bill. It's all fine." He was lying. I knew he was lying. The amounts did not match, and he was being deliberately vague. This was my first real piece of evidence, his own words contradicting the facts on the bank statement hidden in my closet. "Okay," I said, letting it drop for now. "I was just curious." He seemed to relax, thinking he had successfully deflected my concern. "Don't worry about it," he said, forcing a smile. "I've got it under control." I knew then that he had nothing under control. He was in some kind of trouble, and he was trying to use me and my inheritance as his escape route. The fight was no longer just about respect or boundaries. It was about uncovering the truth. The betrayal was deeper and more calculated than I had ever imagined. My resolve hardened. I was no longer just defending my grandparents' house. I was defending my entire future from the man I had promised to spend it with. The days that followed were a strange dance of feigned normalcy. Mark acted as if our big fight had blown over, as if his half-hearted apology had fixed everything. He would try to make small talk, ask about my day, and even suggest we go out for dinner. I played along, keeping my responses short and polite. I did not want to tip him off that I was digging deeper into our finances. I needed more information before I confronted him again. The house had become a silent battlefield, and I was quietly gathering my ammunition. I called the realtor, who had handled my grandparents' estate. Her name was Linda, a kind, no-nonsense woman who had been very helpful when I was settling their affairs. I asked her for an updated appraisal of the property, explaining that I was just doing some long-term financial planning. She was happy to help and promised to get back to me within a few days. Arming myself with the current market value would be crucial if Mark and his family tried to pressure me again. Then I did something that felt like a huge violation of privacy, but I knew it was necessary. I went into Mark's home office while he was at the gym. I had never gone through his personal papers before. I had always believed in respecting his privacy, but he had already shattered my trust. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it down. This was about self-preservation now. His desk was surprisingly organized. Bills were filed neatly in folders. I started with the credit card statements. He had several cards in his own name, ones I barely knew about. I opened the most recent statement for a card with a high credit limit. My breath caught in my throat. The balance was nearly maxed out. It was a staggering amount of debt, far more than I could have imagined. I scanned the list of charges, and my heart sank further. There were more payments to Invest Solutions, the same company from our bank statements. There were charges from expensive restaurants and bars, places I had never been to with him. There were online purchases from high-end clothing stores. And then I saw it, a charge that made everything click into place in the most horrifying way. A reservation for a 2-night stay at a luxury hotel downtown, a hotel known for its high-stakes poker room. The charge was from a weekend 2 months ago when he had told me he was going on a business development retreat. The lies were piling up, one on top of the other, building a tower of deceit that was about to come crashing down.
He was not just in debt.
He was living a secret life, funded by our savings and a mountain of credit. The business idea was likely a complete fabrication, a cover story for the money he was bleeding away. I quickly took photos of the statements with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I had to take them twice. I put the folder back exactly where I had found it and slipped out of the office, my mind reeling. The man I was married to was a stranger. A liar. A gambler. And he was trying to drag me down with him. That evening, I had another conversation with Sarah. I met her at a quiet coffee shop, not wanting to talk at the house. I showed her the photos of the credit card statements on my phone. She whistled softly as she scrolled through them.
Wow.
This is so much worse than I thought. Innovest Solutions, what do you think that is? I don't know, I said, my voice trembling slightly. A fake company he's funneling money through? A person? Whatever it is, it's where a lot of our money has gone. And the gambling, Sarah said, shaking her head. That explains so much. The desperation, the pressure to sell the house. He's not looking for an investment. He's looking for a bailout. I feel so stupid, I whispered, staring into my cold coffee. How did I not see this? The signs must have been there. Don't you dare blame yourself, Sarah said, her voice fierce. He's a good liar. He built a whole reality around you to hide this. This is not your fault. This is all on him. She was right, but it was hard to accept. I had built my life with this man, trusted him implicitly. To find out it was all based on a foundation of lies was devastating. What do I do now? I asked, feeling completely lost. Do I confront him with this? Sarah thought for a moment. I don't know. He's already proven he's a manipulative liar. If you confront him, he'll just try to twist it, gaslight you again. Maybe you need more than just bank statements. You need undeniable proof that he can't wriggle out of. Her words made sense. A confrontation now would just be my word against his. He would deny everything, call me crazy for going through his things, and turn the whole situation around on me. I needed something more. Something concrete. That night, unable to sleep, I lay in the guest bed and stared at the ceiling. The feeling of betrayal was a physical weight on my chest. This was beyond a simple marital spat. This was a deep and calculated deception. My anger was slowly burning away the hurt, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. I thought about my dad's words. You're stronger than they are. I had to be. I made a decision. I was going to call my dad again in the morning. This time, I was going to tell him everything. Not just the argument, but the missing money, the credit card debt, the lies about the business retreat. My dad had spent his entire life dealing with strategy and intelligence. He was a man who knew how to find the truth. And right now, the truth was the only thing that could set me free. I was done being the victim. It was time to start building a case. The next morning, I waited until Mark had left for the day, claiming he had a meeting with a potential investor. The lie was so casual, so easy for him, it made my stomach turn. I went for a walk in a nearby park, needing to be out of the house, away from the spaces we had shared. I found a quiet bench and called my dad. Dad, it's me, I said when he answered. I was wondering when you'd call back, he said. His voice was calm, but I could hear the underlying concern. What's going on? I took a deep breath and laid it all out. I told him about the money missing from our savings account. I told him about the secret credit card debt. I told him about the wire transfers to the mysterious Innovest Solutions and the charges from the casino hotel. I told him that I believed the business idea was a complete lie, a cover for a serious gambling problem. My voice was shaking by the time I finished, the shame and fear of it all bubbling to the surface. He was silent for a long time on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint sound of papers shuffling in his office. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. It was the voice he used when he was truly angry, a controlled calm that was far more intimidating than shouting. He has been systematically deceiving you and stealing your shared assets, he said, stating it as a fact, not a question. I think so, I whispered. This is no longer a marital disagreement, my dad said, his tone hardening. This is fraud. Did you keep records of these transactions? Yes, I said. I printed the bank statements, and I took pictures of his credit card bills. Good, he said. Don't confront him. Do not let him know that you know the extent of this. Continue to act as you have been. I am going to make a few calls. I have a friend, a retired military intelligence officer who now runs a private investigation firm. He owes me a favor. I want him to look into this Invest Solutions and do a full background check on your husband's recent activities. We need a complete picture before we make a move. A wave of relief washed over me, so powerful it almost made me dizzy. I was not alone in this anymore. My dad was taking charge, bringing in resources I never could have accessed on my own. He was moving from a supportive father to a strategic commander, and I was his mission. "Okay, Dad," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you." "You have nothing to thank me for," he said gruffly. "You are my daughter." He picked a fight with the wrong family. Now you need to be strong.
Can you do that?
"Yes," I said, and for the first time, I truly believed it. "I can."
Good. Stay there for now.
"Gather any other evidence you can find safely. Emails, receipts, anything.
But do not put yourself at risk. And do not talk to him about this."
We will act when we have all the facts." "Understood." "Understood," I replied. The military language was comforting, familiar. It meant there was a plan, a protocol. It meant order would be restored to my chaotic world. That week was the longest of my life. I lived a double life. In front of Mark, I was the slightly distant but compliant wife, going through the motions of our shared existence. I made dinner. I asked about his day. I listened to his vague, optimistic updates about his business. Each lie he told was another piece of evidence, another confirmation of his deceit. I kept a secret journal, documenting every conversation, every inconsistency. Behind his back, I was a detective in my own home. I found a shoebox of receipts in his closet, confirming the expensive dinners and bar tabs with people I did not know. I found emails on our shared tablet that he had forgotten to delete, corresponding with someone named Alex from Invest Solutions. The emails were vague, talking about transfers and next steps, but they confirmed the connection. The strain of it all was immense. I felt like a tightly wound spring, ready to snap at any moment. The only thing that kept me going was the daily brief phone call with my dad. He would give me sure updates. His friend, Jack, had started the investigation. They were looking into Invest Solutions. They were tracking Mark's spending habits. They were building a case. During this time, Eleanor called me. Her voice was syrupy sweet, a stark contrast to her venomous tone at the dinner. "Hello, dear," she said. "I was just calling to see how you were. I feel just terrible that our little chat got so heated the other night." It was a classic manipulation tactic. Pretend the attack was a simple chat and feign remorse to get what she wanted. "I'm fine, Eleanor," I said, keeping my voice flat. Good, good," she chirped. "I know we all just want what's best for Mark. He's under so much pressure to make this business a success. A little support from his wife would go such a long way. Have you given any more thought to the house?" There it was, the real reason for her call. "I'm still thinking about it," I lied. I needed to buy more time for my dad's investigation to finish. "Well, don't think too long," she said, her sweet tone failing to mask the impatience underneath. "Opportunities like this don't wait forever. Mark is counting on you." The call ended, leaving a sour taste in my mouth. She was his accomplice, either knowingly or through willful ignorance. She was so blinded by her ambition for her son that she was willing to help him pressure me, to help him take the last thing I had from my grandparents. Her call only strengthened my resolve. They were all in this together, and they were all going to face the consequences together. A few days later, my dad called me. His voice was different. It was grim. "We have the information," he said, without any preamble. "It's worse than we thought." The breakthrough came on a Thursday afternoon. I was at the library, needing a neutral space to take my dad's call. My hands were clammy as I answered the phone. "We have the full report from Jack," my dad said. His voice was cold and hard, like chips of granite. "Are you ready to hear this?" "I am," I said, my own voice surprisingly steady. I had been preparing myself for the worst, and I was ready to face it. "Invest Solutions is a shell corporation," he began. "It has no employees, no products, no office. It's a mailing address at a strip mall. The man behind it, The Alex that Mark was emailing is a known con artist who specializes in fraudulent investment schemes. He targets people with gambling problems, promising them a way to win their money back. He takes their money and disappears. I closed my eyes, the librarian's quiet shushing from the front desk a distant buzz. It was all a scam. A complete and total scam. So the money is gone, I stated, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. All of it, my dad confirmed. The $15,000 from your savings, and it looks like at least another $20,000 from those credit cards. Jack's report indicates that Mark was likely the one who was scammed. He was probably chasing his gambling losses, and this Alex character convinced him he had a surefire way to get it back. The business idea was not just a cover for his gambling. It was a desperate, foolish attempt to recover from his gambling losses by throwing more money into another, bigger gamble. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He had been trying to get me to sell my grandparents' house to fund a con man. What about the business plan? I asked, needing to know how deep the lies went. It's a fantasy, my dad said bluntly. Jack couldn't find any evidence that Mark has taken a single legitimate step to start a business. No registration, no patent filings, no meetings with actual investors. It's all a story he told you and his mother to explain where the money was going. I leaned my head back against the bookshelf, the hard spines of the books digging into my scalp. The entire foundation of my marriage was a lie. He had not just deceived me about money, he had fabricated an entire professional life. He was not the ambitious entrepreneur I had married. He was a gambler, a debtor, and a victim of his own foolishness, and he was willing to sacrifice my heritage to save himself. The report is on its way to you, my dad continued. A digital copy, password protected. It contains everything. The bank records, the credit card statements, Jack's full investigation into Innovest Solutions and Alex, and even surveillance photos of Mark entering and leaving the casino on multiple occasions. It's undeniable. This was it. The key artifact. The undeniable proof that Sarah had said I needed. It was not just a stack of bills anymore. It was a comprehensive file detailing my husband's secret life of debt and deceit. The power had shifted. I was no longer the accuser. I was the one holding all the cards. What do I do now? I asked, my voice quiet. Now we set the stage, my dad said, and I could hear the strategist in him taking over. This is not going to be a quiet conversation. This needs to be a final, decisive action. You are going to arrange a meeting. You will call Mark and you will tell him you are ready to give him your final answer about the house. You will tell him to have his mother and sister there. They were all present for your humiliation. They will all be present for your vindication. A shiver went down my spine. He was right. This had started with the three of them, united against me. It needed to end with the three of them. When? I asked. I am driving down, he said. I will be there Saturday morning. We will do this on Saturday at your house. I will be there with you. The thought of my father being there, a formidable, unimpeachable presence, gave me a surge of courage. Okay, Dad, I said. Saturday. One more thing, he said. When I arrive, I won't be alone. I'm bringing 2 of my junior aides with me. They will be in uniform. They are not there to intimidate. They are there as witnesses and to ensure your safety. They will help you pack a bag and escort you from the house when it is over. This is a non-negotiable. I was stunned. Soldiers. In my living room. The image was surreal, but I understood the message it would send. It was a visual representation of the line that had been crossed. It was a symbol of order, of consequence, of the unshakable support I had from my family, the very family they had mocked. Understood, I said, a strange sense of calm settling over me. The hurt and fear were still there, but they were now buried under a thick layer of ice. I knew what I had to do. The path forward was clear, and I was ready to walk it. I left the library and drove home, the investigators' report a heavy, invisible weight in my email inbox. When I walked through the door, Mark was in the kitchen, humming to himself as he made a sandwich. He looked up and smiled at me, a carefree, easy smile that made my skin crawl. He had no idea that his world was about to be dismantled. "Hey you," he said cheerfully. "How was your day?" I took a deep breath and arranged my face into a neutral expression. "It was fine. I did a lot of thinking." His eyes lit up with hopeful greed. "Oh yeah? About what?" "About the house," I said, my voice even. "I've made a decision. I'd like to talk about it on Saturday. I think it's best if your mom and Chloe are here too, since they're so invested in this." He practically beamed, his whole body relaxing as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He thought he had won. He thought his pressure tactics, his emotional manipulation, and his family's bullying had finally broken me. "Yeah, of course," he said eagerly. "That's a great idea. I'll call them right now. Saturday will be perfect." He walked away, already pulling out his phone, a triumphant smirk on his face. He was so sure of himself, so confident in his ability to control me. He had no idea that he was not arranging his victory party. He was scheduling his own execution. I stood there in the quiet house, feeling a profound and chilling sense of finality. The woman he thought he had married, the quiet, accommodating peacekeeper, was gone. In her place was a soldier's daughter, armed with the truth and ready for battle. Saturday morning arrived with a gray, overcast sky that perfectly matched my mood. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were watching a movie of my own life. I moved through the morning with a calm, deliberate purpose. I showered. I got dressed in simple, severe clothing, black pants and a gray sweater. I did not put on any makeup. This was not a performance. This was an ending. Mark was practically giddy. He cleaned the house, bought pastries from a local bakery, and set out the good coffee cups. He was preparing for a celebration. He kept trying to catch my eye, to share a conspiratorial smile, but I kept my expression blank. My coldness seemed to unnerve him slightly, but he likely wrote it off as me being nervous or sad about my decision. He had no idea what was coming. Eleanor and Chloe arrived precisely at 10 o'clock, dressed as if they were attending a business negotiation they were certain to win. Eleanor wore a crisp pantsuit, and Chloe had on a sharp blazer. They both carried an air of smug triumph. "Hello, dear," Eleanor said as she breezed past me, her perfume cloying and sweet. "I'm so glad you've decided to see reason." Chloe just gave me a tight, victorious smile. They all settled in the living room, Mark pouring coffee, Eleanor and Chloe taking the two armchairs like thrones. I remained standing. They looked up at me, a panel of judges waiting for the final verdict. "So," Mark said, rubbing his hands together with nervous excitement. "You said you have an answer for us about the house." I looked at each of them, one by one. Mark, my husband, the liar and thief. Eleanor, his mother, the chief manipulator. Chloe, his sister, the cruel enforcer. They were a team, united in their greed and their disrespect for me. "I do have an answer," I said, my voice clear and steady. The calmness in my own voice surprised me. "But before I give it to you, we need to talk about something else. We need to talk about the money." Mark's smile faltered. "The money? What are you talking about?" "We're here to talk about the house. We're here to talk about the truth." I corrected him. "Let's start with our savings account. The $15,000 you transferred out over the last few months without telling me. Where did that money go, Mark?" He paled, his eyes darting towards his mother. "I told you it was for bills. Unexpected expenses." "No, it wasn't," I said flatly. "It was wired to a company called Innovest Solutions." "What is Innovest Solutions, Mark?" Eleanor sat forward in her chair, her brow furrowed. "Mark, what is she talking about?" "She's confused, Mom," he said quickly, trying to wave it away. "It's part of the startup costs for the business. It's an investment firm." "Is it?" I asked, taking a step closer. "Is that what it is? Or is it a shell corporation run by a con artist named Alex who preys on desperate gamblers?" The color drained completely from Mark's face. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. Chloe and Eleanor stared at him, their expressions shifting from confusion to dawning horror. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "Don't you?" I pressed on, my voice like ice. Let's talk about your credit cards, then. The ones with over $20,000 of debt on them. The debt you accumulated at luxury hotels with poker rooms. The debt from the business retreats you were on while I thought you were working on our future. You went through my things, he sputtered, outrage mixing with his panic. He was trying to pivot, to make me the bad guy. Yes, I did, I said without a trace of apology. Because I knew you were lying to me. You have been lying to me for months, maybe years. You have a gambling problem, Mark. You've lost all our savings and have put us in catastrophic debt. That's not true, he shouted, his voice cracking. The business will pay it all back. It's just a temporary setback. Eleanor stood up, her face a mask of fury. How dare you make these accusations? My son is not a gambler. He is a visionary. Your son is a liar, I said, turning my cold gaze on her. And you have enabled him every step of the way. You pushed him, you pressured me. All so he could get his hands on my inheritance to cover up his mess. Right on cue, the doorbell rang. The sound cut through the tense atmosphere like a gunshot. Everyone froze. Mark looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. Who is that? I have someone here who can help clear this up, I said calmly. I walked to the front door and opened it. My father was standing on the porch. He was in his full dress uniform, his shoulders back, his expression severe and unyielding. The metals on his chest gleamed even in the dim morning light. Standing just behind him, one on each side, were two young, imposing soldiers, also in immaculate uniforms. They stood at parade rest, their faces impassive, their presence radiating an aura of absolute discipline and authority. I stepped back and let them enter. My father walked into the living room and stopped, his gaze sweeping over Mark, Eleanor, and Chloe. The three of them were frozen, their mouths slightly agape. The sheer, unexpected power of his presence had sucked all the air out of the room. He did not say a word.
He did not have to.
I walked over to the coffee table where the pastries and coffee cups sat, a pathetic monument to Mark's deluded celebration. I took a thick manila folder from under a magazine where I had hidden it and placed it on the table with a soft thud. This is your business, Mark, I said, my voice ringing with clarity in the dead silent room. This is the report from a private investigator. It has your bank records, your credit card statements, a full profile on the con man you gave our money to. It even has pictures of you going into the casino. It's all here. All the proof. All your lies. Mark stared at the folder as if it were a venomous snake. He sank back onto the sofa, his body deflating. He was broken. Eleanor opened her mouth to speak, to protest, but I cut her off. I turned to her, and for the first time, I let the full force of my anger show. You did this, I said, my voice low and shaking with fury. You raised a man who thought it was acceptable to lie, to steal from his wife, and to try and sell her family's legacy to cover his tracks. You demanded a good wife who would make sacrifices. Well, I am making a sacrifice. I am sacrificing my marriage to save myself from your son. I am here, in this room. This feels like the final scene of a play I never wanted to be in. I look at Mark, and he can't meet my eyes. He is staring at the folder on the table. It represents the complete demolition of his life. His lies are all there, printed in black and white. My father is still standing by the door, a silent, powerful statue. His presence is a physical weight in the room. He hasn't spoken. He hasn't moved. He is simply a witness, a symbol of the order and consequence that has finally arrived. Chloe is pale, her usual sharp demeanor gone. She is looking at her brother, then at her mother, then at me, as if seeing us all for the first time. The smugness has been wiped clean from her face, replaced by shock. I turn my attention back to Mark. I have made my decision about the house, I say, my voice ringing with a finality that cannot be argued with. It is not for sale. It will never be for sale. It will remain in my family where it belongs. I pause, letting the words sink in. I am filing for divorce. I continue. Effective immediately. This marriage is over. Eleanor lets out a strangled gasp. You can't do this. I can, I say, looking directly at her. I am. And there's more. I expect Mark to pay back every single cent he took from our joint savings account. And he will be responsible for 100% of his personal credit card debt. It will all be in the divorce settlement. Mark finally looks up at me, his eyes pleading. Please, he whispers.
Don't do this. We can fix this.
I can fix this. No, you can't, I say, my voice devoid of any pity. There is nothing left to fix. You broke it all. You broke my trust. You broke our vows. You broke us. It is at this moment that my father finally speaks. His voice is not loud, but it commands the absolute attention of everyone in the room. It is the voice of a man who is used to giving orders and having them followed without question. My daughter has made her decision, he says, his words precise and deliberate. The discussion is over. He looks at Mark, his eyes like steel. You will not contact her. You will not harass her. All future communication will be directed through her lawyer. Is that understood? Mark can only nod, a pathetic, jerky movement of his head. He looks utterly defeated. My father then gestures slightly towards the two young soldiers standing behind him. These men are here to ensure my daughter can gather her personal belongings without being disturbed. They will escort her from the premises. You three will remain in this room until they are gone.
It is not a request.
It is an order. Eleanor looks like she wants to argue, to fight, to scream. But one look at my father's face, at the two silent soldiers in uniform, and the fight goes out of her. She slumps back into her armchair, her face ashen. She has lost. They have all lost. I turn without another word and walk towards the hallway that leads to the bedrooms. One of the soldiers follows me, staying a respectful distance behind. The other remains in the entryway, a silent guard. The message is clear. I am protected. I am no longer their victim. I go into our bedroom, the room I once shared with a man I thought I knew, and I pack a suitcase. I move with a steady, unhurried pace. I pack my clothes, my toiletries, my personal documents. I take the framed photos of my family from the nightstand. I leave behind everything he ever gave me. The jewelry, the gifts, the hollow symbols of a life that was a lie. As I pack, I can hear the muffled sound of Eleanor starting to sob in the living room. It is a raw, ugly sound. I feel nothing.
No pity, no satisfaction.
Just a vast, empty space where my love for her son used to be. When I am finished, I walk back into the living room, my suitcase in my hand. The soldier takes it from me without a word. The scene is exactly as I left it. Mark is still on the sofa, staring into space. Chloe is sitting rigidly in her chair, her hands clenched in her lap. Eleanor is weeping into her hands. They are a tableau of ruin, a family portrait of their own making. I walk to the front door, where my father is waiting. I do not look back. There is nothing left for me here. As I step out into the cool, gray air, I feel a sense of release, so profound it is almost overwhelming. It is the feeling of a great weight being lifted from my shoulders, a weight I did not even realize I had been carrying for so long. The lies, the disrespect, the constant low-level anxiety of trying to please people who could never be pleased. It is all gone. My father puts a steadying hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, he says quietly. You were strong. I nod, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. We walk to his car, the two soldiers following with my bags. As we drive away, I do not look back at the house. I look forward, through the windshield, at the open road ahead. The future is uncertain, and I know there will be difficult days. But for the first time in a very long time, I feel free. The discipline my family gave me, the discipline they had so often mocked, had not made me rigid. It had made me unbreakable.
It had saved me.
The car ride with my dad was quiet. He did not press me to talk. He just drove, his presence a solid, reassuring anchor. The two young soldiers sat in the back, silent and professional. They had witnessed the implosion of my marriage, yet their faces betrayed nothing. They were just there to do a job, to support their commanding officer's daughter. We drove to a hotel near the airport where my dad had booked a suite for us. He wanted to make sure I had a safe, neutral place to land before I figured out my next steps. Once we were inside the suite, he formally thanked and dismissed his aides. They nodded crisply, said, "Ma'am," to me and left. Left alone with my dad, I finally allowed myself to crumble, just for a moment. I sat down on the sofa, and the tears I had held back for so long finally came. They were not tears of sadness for the marriage I had lost, but tears of relief for the nightmare that was over. My dad sat next to me, not saying a word, just placing a comforting hand on my back until the storm passed. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice hoarse, when I could finally speak. "Now you rest," he said gently. "And then we plan. I've already been in touch with a lawyer. A bulldog. She specializes in contentious divorces, especially those involving financial fraud. She's the best. Her name is Margaret." He had already planned the next steps. Of course he had. He was a commander. He saw the entire battlefield, not just the current fight. "You'll talk to her on Monday. She'll file the papers. She'll handle everything. Your only job is to take care of yourself." Over the next week, I followed his advice. I stayed in the hotel, ordering room service and sleeping more than I had in years. I talked to Margaret, the lawyer, on the phone. She was as formidable as my dad had promised. She was sharp, direct, and completely on my side. After I emailed her the investigator's report, she was practically giddy. "This is an open and shut case of dissipation of marital assets," she told me, her voice buzzing with professional excitement. "He won't have a leg to stand on. We will get your money back, and we will make sure he is solely responsible for all the debt he incurred." True to her word, she was relentless. She filed the divorce papers and a motion to freeze all our joint assets to prevent Mark from hiding any more money. Mark, it turned out, had hired a cheap local lawyer who was completely out of his depth. They tried to argue that the business debt was a shared marital expense. Margaret shut that down immediately with the evidence of the gambling and the fraudulent investment scheme. I received one text message from Mark during that first week. It read, "I can't believe you did this to me."
To us.
My mom is a wreck. The sheer audacity of his attempt to guilt-trip me was almost laughable. He was not sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. I did not reply. I forwarded the message to Margaret, who replied with a single word, "Perfect." A few weeks later, I got a call from a mutual friend, Jessica. She sounded awkward and uncomfortable. "Hey," she said. I heard about you and Mark. I'm so sorry." "Thank you, Jessica," I said, waiting. I knew this was not just a sympathy call. "The thing is," she continued, her voice dropping, "Eleanor has been telling people a completely different story. She's saying that you had an affair and that you left Mark, taking all your money with you to be with this other guy. She's trying to ruin your reputation." I sighed. Of course she was. She could not accept the reality that her perfect son was a failure and a fraud, so she had to invent a narrative where he was the victim. "That's not what happened, Jessica, and you know it," I said calmly. "I know," she said quickly, "but some people are believing her. She's very convincing. The truth has a way of coming out," I said, a cool confidence in my voice that I had not possessed a month ago. "Don't worry about it." And the truth did come out. Margaret, my lawyer, made sure of it. During the discovery process, the full extent of Mark's financial ruin became public record. The gambling debts, the money lost to the con artist, the maxed-out credit cards. It all became part of the legal filings. Word spread quickly through their social circle. People who had once listened to Eleanor's gossip now saw the hard, undeniable facts. The narrative collapsed. They were not the victims of a cruel wife. They were the architects of their own social and financial implosion. The divorce was finalized in less than 6 months. It was a complete victory. I was awarded the full amount of money Mark had taken from our savings. He was made solely responsible for all his personal debts. The house we had shared was to be sold, with the proceeds split after my savings were paid back. And my grandparents' house, the catalyst for this whole mess, was affirmed as my sole and separate property, never to be touched by him or his creditors. I moved into my grandparents' house. It was quiet and peaceful. I spent the first few weeks just being there, feeling the history in its walls. I painted the rooms, planted a garden in the backyard, and slowly began to build a new life for myself, one that was entirely my own. I spoke to Sarah often. She was my rock, celebrating every small victory with me. I saw Chloe the other day at the grocery store. She told me on the phone one afternoon. She looked awful. She pretended not to see me. The humiliation they had tried to heap on me had bounced back and landed squarely on them. Mark had to declare bankruptcy. Eleanor and Chloe, once so proud and prominent in their community, became social pariahs, their names synonymous with scandal and deceit. My dad visited me a few months after I had settled in. He walked through my little house, a small, proud smile on his face. He looked at the new paint on the walls and the blooming flowers in my garden. "You've made this place your own," he said. "I'm trying," I replied. "It feels good. It feels safe." We sat on the back porch, drinking iced tea. The anger and turmoil of the past year felt like a distant storm. The sky above me was finally clear. I had been through a fire, but I had not been consumed by it. I had emerged stronger, more self-aware, and with an unshakable understanding of my own worth. They had tried to make me small, to make me feel weak and sentimental. They had mocked the very foundations of my character, the discipline and strength instilled in me by my family. But in the end, that was what had saved me. They thought they were picking a fight with a timid wife they could easily bully. They never realized they were taking on a soldier's daughter. They learned their lesson. They finally understood what it felt like to be disrespected, to be cornered, to lose everything. They had wanted me to make a sacrifice for their future. And I did. I sacrificed them.